What happened to Lorie Paige? The question echoed across Tallahassee for nearly 2 years. We got an answer in April when police charged her father, Andrew Wiley, with killing her and dumping her body. Then the question became why.
It was April 5th, 2025, when the remains of 12-year-old Lorie Paige were finally uncovered, nearly 2 years after she was first reported missing. For months, the case had baffled authorities, drawn them across state lines, and led them through hundreds of dead-end leads. But no one could have predicted the truth that would come to light that day. Her body, hidden deep in the brush of Thomas County, Georgia, was found in the very same area her father's phone records had traced back in June 2023. But there's the question that haunts the entire case. Why did Andrew Wiley, Lorie's own father, call 911 on June 3, 2023, reporting that his daughter had run away days after her disappearance? Why did he say she left in the middle of the night with nothing more than a backpack while he was at work? What kind of man reports his child missing, but shows no real concern for her whereabouts? And as the investigation unfolded, questions only multiplied. And when the truth finally came crashing down, it revealed a conclusion no one saw coming. Stay with us as we unravel the twists, the deception, and the heart-wrenching story of what really happened to Lorie Paige. But before we get into it, this channel is focused on careful, well-researched true crime stories. If you enjoy this kind of content, subscribing really helps the channel grow. I'd also like to hear your thoughts on this case, and let me know where you're watching from. This video is created strictly for educational and documentary purposes. It does not glorify or condone the actions discussed. Viewer discretion is advised. Born on April 14, 2011, Lorie Annalise Paige entered a world already marked by instability. Her mother, Miranda White, was only 17 when she gave birth to Lorie. A young mother overwhelmed by the pressures of parenthood, so Miranda's relationship with Lorie was strained from the start. Lorie's father, Andrew Wiley, was largely absent during Lorie's early years, and it was Miranda who held the primary responsibility for Lorie's upbringing, and that responsibility was often neglected. According to Lorie's grandmother, Brooklyn Paige, Miranda never truly bonded with her daughter. Brooklyn mentioned how Miranda had expressed doubts about keeping the pregnancy when she was just 6 months along, but by then, it was too late. Miranda, unable to connect with her newborn, spent her nights out partying while Lorie was left behind. Brooklyn also said that Miranda would sleep through the day, leaving Lorie to fend for herself in an environment where basic needs were often neglected. The mother's indifference was evident in the way Lorie had to get by on her own. Even as a toddler, Lorie had to become incredibly self-sufficient, finding food on shelves, and learning to navigate a world where the people supposed to care for her were often absent. But as much as Brooklyn tried to care for her granddaughter, the situation at home was hard to fix. Brooklyn moved to Tampa to take on a more active role in Lorie's life, but even that couldn't undo the damage caused by years of neglect. Brooklyn recalled feeling heartbroken seeing her granddaughter struggle in a home where love seemed to be a distant dream. Eventually, CPS became involved, and for a brief period, Lorie was removed from Miranda's care and placed with her great-grandfather. However, this arrangement was only temporary. Eventually, Lorie was returned to Miranda. Though Miranda was now physically present, emotionally, she was still absent. From the outside, it seemed like a broken cycle, a child living in a world where love was scarce and security was fleeting. But Lorie, in her quiet way, continued to try to adapt, trying to survive in a world that never quite made sense to her. By 2021, Miranda White found herself overwhelmed by financial troubles and the constant need to relocate for better work opportunities. Unable to care for her daughter any longer, Miranda made the difficult decision to sign over full custody to Andrew in 2022. Lorie, at this point, was no stranger to change. She had already experienced the uncertainty of constantly moving from place to place with her mother. However, the move from Nashville, Tennessee to Tallahassee, Florida was different. It wasn't just another new city. It was a new life, one where Andrew had become the primary parent, and Lorie had to leave behind not only her familiar surroundings, but also her friends. She had friends in Nashville, people she trusted, and leaving them behind was a painful blow. Despite Andrew's assurances that she would make new friends and that everything would be okay, The reality of starting over again hit Lorie hard. In Tallahassee, Lorie enrolled in Griffin Middle School, but rather than finding comfort in the new school year, she became even more withdrawn. But the transition was far from smooth. For a 12-year-old who had already endured so much, being thrust into a new environment with no social connections only amplified her emotional distress. She struggled to fit in, and every attempt to find a sense of belonging felt like an uphill battle. At school, teachers noticed Lorie's quiet nature, her reluctance to engage with her peers, and at times her emotional breakdowns. She would cry in class without explanation, and it became evident that something wasn't right. One teacher, Nathan George, recalled a moment when Lorie passed him a note asking if he liked her. For a shy 12-year-old, this wasn't typical behavior, and it left Nathan wondering about the turmoil that Lorie was likely facing outside of school. It wasn't long before Lorie's behavior became more erratic. On one occasion, she threw an object across the room during a lesson, her face twisted with anger, but no one could pinpoint the cause. The school counselor, Lisa Britt, was brought in to speak with Lorie. When Lorie was interviewed, her results clearly pointed to depression. Lorie began to confide in her classmates, sharing fragments of her life at home with Andrew, and the reality of her relationship with him started to emerge. One classmate recalled that Lorie had mentioned how life at home with Andrew had become harsh and violent. Lorie spoke about the tension that existed between them, hinting at the horror of what she was enduring in the house. One particular incident stayed in the classmate's mind. Andrew had approached her at the bus stop, holding a belt in his hands. This was alarming, but no one truly understood the gravity of the situation at the time. However, what struck the classmate most was Lorie's resignation. She wasn't angry or bitter when she spoke about Andrew's behavior. Rather, she seemed almost used to it, as if she had accepted this part of her life. Lorie's words about her father were filled with a sense of helplessness, like she had no escape from the life she was living. But that was just the beginning. On June 3, 2023, Andrew Wiley called 911 to report that his daughter, Lorie Paige, had gone missing. According to Andrew, Lorie had left home with her backpack while he was at work, and he had no idea where she had gone. He seemed calm, almost too calm, for a father whose child was missing. But the police didn't jump to conclusions immediately. They had heard similar stories before. In fact, Lorie had run away from home on at least 2 occasions in the past, only to return after a few days. It wasn't unusual for her to pack up and leave, especially considering the emotional distance between her and Andrew. But the fact that Lorie had gone missing again, and this time for a longer period, raised questions.
Jacob, Griffin Middle School teacher Margaret Summers says Paige's teachers and students have not forgotten about her. She is still on their minds, and she's growing more concerned since not many questions have been answered since Lorie Paige vanished 7 months ago without a trace.
It's unsettling. Everything's not right in the world because she's still missing. And there's a part of us that's not going to be at peace knowing that a kid that we loved and cared about is just gone.
Margaret Summers says Lorie Paige is an attentive student, describing her as friendly and smart. Summers says despite the time that has passed, Paige has not been forgotten.
At least 1 or 2 people every week ask me, so did they find the girl that went missing? And I always have to tell them no.
Paige was last seen in early June of 2023 on Continental Court near Ocala Road. According to TPD, this is the longest missing juvenile case the department has seen within the past year.
I have never worked a case where a child has been missing this long without some sort of lead or communication from the child.
TPD detective Annalee Drake says over the past 7 months, they've looked into every lead but haven't gotten closer to finding Paige. Drake says there was one report of Paige running away 1 month prior to her disappearance last June.
Whether she left voluntarily or not, we have a lot of concern for her, and we don't have anything pushing to what happened after the night she went.
When Andrew spoke with detectives, he explained that Miranda White, Lorie's mother, had tried to contact Lorie in the days leading up to her disappearance. According to Andrew, Lorie had become upset after the fallout with her mother and had been distant ever since. He suggested that Lorie's emotional state was the reason she left, that the tension between Lorie and her mother, coupled with their failed relationship, was likely the cause of Lorie's decision to run away once again. However, detectives were already beginning to question the credibility of Andrew's explanation. Yes, Lorie had run away before, but the situation felt different this time. Her emotional volatility, her breakdowns at school, and the growing concern among her teachers were all signs that something had happened. It wasn't just the typical teenage rebellion. This felt like something deeper, something more unsettling.
Tuesday, about 90 people between Tallahassee Police and Fire Department searched 64 acres of Mission San Luis Park. TPD says Paige was last seen in the general area near Continental Court off Ocala Road.
Our concern grows day by day. We want to be able to bring Lorie home and reunite her with her family and friends. When you have this amount of time that goes by, our concern always increases, but we've really been concerned since day one.
Alicia Hill with the police department says this is their 5th search since Paige was originally reported missing last summer.
But the reality is there's so much that goes on behind the scenes, so much investigative work. Even with a minimal digital footprint, we still have to comb through evidence online.
And as the search continues, Summers remembers Paige as one of her brightest.
But that's not all. There were inconsistencies in his timeline. Andrew had called in sick to work on May 27th and May 29th, and when investigators pressed him about what he had been doing during those days, his answers became vague. His geodata placed him in Jacksonville, Florida, but Andrew's explanations for his location didn't add up. He had claimed he went to drop off a friend, Tim Brown, at the airport, but there were no records to corroborate his story. Andrew's shifting accounts were starting to seem less like the confusion of a worried father, and more like the actions of someone hiding something. As detectives began to piece together Andrew's story, they found even more holes. Andrew's brother, Wiley, was questioned about his brother's whereabouts during the time Lorie went missing. Antoine seemed completely unaware of Andrew's claim about Tim Brown, insisting that he didn't know anyone by that name. When asked if he thought Andrew could hurt Lorie, Antoine responded firmly, "No, Andrew would never hurt Lorie." But Antoine's statements did little to clear up the suspicions swirling around Andrew. In the meantime, Andrew's girlfriend, who was away at National Guard training during Lorie's disappearance, was questioned as well. She confirmed that Andrew had a friend named Tim, but not Tim Brown. She seemed confused about why Andrew had mentioned this particular name to the police. It was also discovered that on the very same day he called 911 to report Lorie missing, Andrew had purchased a one-way flight ticket. The ticket was for a flight that would have taken him out of the country, suggesting that Andrew had been planning to flee before the investigation could catch up with him. Then, detectives uncovered something else. Andrew had recently purchased Plan B contraceptive pills just days before Lorie's disappearance. This raised massive red flags. The purchase was too close to the time Lorie went missing, and the nature of the purchase along with the age of Lorie led investigators to consider the possibility of SA. As the investigation into Lorie Paige's disappearance deepened, detectives turned their attention to Andrew Wiley's phone, hoping to find concrete evidence to either support or disprove his claims. However, Andrew was initially reluctant to hand over his devices to investigators. He hesitated, offering various excuses and delaying the inspection, which immediately raised suspicions. In a case where every piece of information could be vital, his refusal to cooperate was a red flag. Detectives, though, were persistent, and eventually they were able to seize his phone. A forensic analysis of Andrew's phone revealed a troubling series of searches, remote areas, bodies of water in Georgia and Alabama, and even queries about how police search for missing children. These searches were highly specific, detailing locations that seemed far too deliberate to be the actions of an innocent man concerned about his missing daughter. The phone records revealed that Andrew's phone had led investigators to a remote plantation in Thomas County, Georgia, a place that would later become central to the case. They searched the area multiple times and found nothing, and the investigation had seemed endless, each day dragging on with no clear answers. Lorie Paige had been missing for almost 2 years, and the search had led authorities down a series of false trails and dead ends. But on April 5, 2025, the case took a dramatic turn when a prescribed burn at a remote plantation in Thomas County, Georgia, finally cleared the dense brush that had once hidden the truth. What had been obscured for nearly 2 years by thick undergrowth and trees was now revealed to the waiting investigators. Lorie's remains were uncovered, the final piece of the puzzle that had eluded everyone for so long. For 2 years, she had been hidden there, just miles away from where her father had lived and reported her missing. The remains were finally identified. A DNA test would confirm what everyone had feared. The remains were indeed Lorie Paige's.
To her death.
That was news that we needed. However, it wasn't the welcome news that we wanted. It wasn't one of hope, but certainly a one of closure. And certainly that puts us on the path of what do we do now?
TPD shared this timeline of the search that led to Paige's remains being found. June 3rd, 2023, Paige's father, Andrew Wiley, reported her missing, telling police she'd packed a backpack and left overnight while he was at work. After some inconsistencies with his story, police eventually shifted their focus to Wiley. In February 2024, a phone was taken from his home that they say included questionable internet searches about remote bodies of water in Georgia and Alabama. Not long afterwards, police say they also had digital evidence that led them to a remote area of Thomas County, where they searched for Lorie, but nothing was found. Until April 5th, when investigators returned to that area after a prescribed burn that cleared away the brush. A search of the area turned up Paige's remains. I spoke with Pastor Rudy Ferguson Friday, who led some of the efforts to find Paige.
It's our loss. Her life being taken was a part of us as well.
Ferguson says Friday's news will be felt deeply in this community.
Every little girl could be a little Lorie. You know, every little boy could be in the same situation as little Lorie. So it's important to understand that.
He's urging neighbors to safeguard our children.
We must start protecting our children. We must pay attention to the signs that they're in trauma situation. We must begin to just be our neighbors, love one another, make sure that, the children next door.
Pages. Detectives have, however, found more evidence that confirmed Andrew's involvement. They had turned their attention to his Dodge Charger, which was still in his possession. And when they examined the car, they found Lorie's blood inside. Though the vehicle had been cleaned, it still showed signs of a violent event. The stain in the passenger seat was undeniable. Andrew had made an attempt to erase the evidence, but it wasn't enough to hide the truth. Even more unsettling was the fact that the car was missing its floor mats, which detectives knew could have contained more vital evidence.
Today is not a happy day. Today's a sad day in the sense that we did recover the remains of missing 12-year-old Lorie. I told you 2 years ago we would never give up. I told you 2 years ago we would find Lorie and we would bring her home. I told you 2 years ago that we would find who did this and we would arrest them and bring them to justice. And today I stand before you to tell you we have done just that. So we have recovered Lorie's remains and we have arrested the person responsible for this crime.
Standing before the media, he confirmed what had been suspected for so long. Andrew Wiley is the person responsible for Lorie's death, he stated bluntly.
After a comprehensive and exhaustive 22-month investigation into the disappearance of 12-year-old Lorie Paige, the Tallahassee Police Department has arrested her father, 36-year-old Andrew Wiley, on the charges of second-degree murder.
His voice, steady but firm, didn't leave room for doubt. We had evidence of the fact that he was seeking out Plan B. If he had gotten her pregnant, if he had given her a venereal disease, those would be hard things to explain. It was also reported that Andrew was treating STD around this time. Lorie's tragic fate wasn't the result of a runaway teen, as Andrew had tried to portray, but something far darker, more calculated. Andrew was arrested, and this seemed to bring some level of closure to the investigation. But the road ahead was far from simple.
TPD arresting Lorie's father, Andrew Wiley, in connection to her death. The father had his first court appearance Saturday morning. Wiley was denied bond and ordered to not have contact with several of his family members. He had a public defender appointed.
With Andrew facing trial, the possibility of a death penalty was discussed, but there was still no definitive evidence to prove premeditation, which would be required to secure a conviction for first-degree murder. Prosecutors pushed forward with their case, believing the motive was rooted in SA that had gone horribly wrong. Despite this, they didn't pursue the death penalty, leaving Andrew to face the full consequences of his actions under the charges of second-degree murder. But just when the case seemed to be moving toward trial, the unexpected happened. In June 2025, while still in custody, Andrew Wiley died suddenly.
Andrew Wiley, the man accused of killing his daughter Lorie Paige, is dead after having a medical emergency. The Leon County Sheriff's Office confirmed his death late this evening. According to LCSO, staff moved Wiley to their medical unit and attempted life-saving measures. They say the 36-year-old died a little after 5:30 this evening. A medical examiner will do an autopsy to determine the cause.
The news was shocking, not just because of the timing, but because Andrew's death left the case in limbo. He had been held at the Leon County Jail, awaiting trial when he died of a pulmonary embolism. The medical examiner's report confirmed that Andrew's death was natural, caused by a blood clot blocking an artery in his lungs. His sudden death meant that he would never face trial for the murder of his daughter. For many, this left a bitter taste of unfinished justice, and Lorie's case, which had already stretched on for nearly 2 years, now seemed unresolved. Despite Andrew's death, the investigation had already established enough evidence to confirm his guilt, and the public's sense of justice was not entirely lost. However, the tragedy of Andrew's death did not erase the truth of what had happened to Lorie. Investigators and State Attorney Jack Campbell made it clear: Andrew Wiley was responsible for his daughter's death. In the absence of a trial, Andrew's death left Lorie's family without the closure they deserved. In the days following Andrew's death, community reactions were mixed. Margaret Summers, Lorie's teacher, expressed her sorrow but also a sense of relief. "We finally know the truth," she said quietly, her voice tinged with both sadness and acceptance. Margaret knew that for Lorie's classmates, the absence of a trial would leave a void, but they would never see Andrew Wiley face the consequences of his actions in the way they had hoped. Pastor Rudy Ferguson, who had been deeply involved in the community's search efforts, shared similar feelings. He had been a constant figure throughout the search for Lorie, attending vigils, helping with the search efforts, and praying for her safe return. The community's mixed reactions towards Miranda were difficult to navigate, as some saw her as a neglectful mother, while others believed she was a victim of her own circumstances, caught in a world of financial instability and poor decisions. Either way, Miranda's role in Lorie's life had ended long before the tragedy unfolded, leaving her with the realization that she would never be able to reconcile with her daughter. Despite the overwhelming pain and the questions left unanswered, the community found a way to honor Lorie's memory. A memorial service was held, where those who knew and loved her gathered to remember her short life.
Tallahassee remembered Lorie Paige Tuesday evening.
She ran from class to class just to be sure she was never tardy. She was attentive and tried to get every answer correct.
As the community filled Bethel AME Church to celebrate the dedicated, passionate, and caring former middle school student.
We are proud to say she was indeed a tiger.
Those who knew Lorie personally, and even those who didn't, but feel like they did through the 22-month-long search effort for Paige.
The event, though bittersweet, allowed the community to come together, to grieve, and to begin the healing process. In addition to the memorial, a bubble-blowing ceremony was held in Lorie's honor. It was a small, simple gesture, but for those who participated, it was deeply symbolic. Lorie had loved blowing bubbles as a child, and for the community, the act of blowing bubbles together became a way of sending Lorie's spirit up into the air, as if to say goodbye in the most innocent way possible. This case would forever remain a haunting reminder of the dangers that can lie within families, of the secrets that can be kept behind closed doors, and the silent suffering of children who feel trapped with no way out. What are your thoughts on the case? Share them in the comments below and kindly subscribe for more. Thank you. If you found this case as unsettling as we did, don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more in-depth true crime stories, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new episode. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.